quality since they've had plenty of time to. They've had like 2 whole extra weeks to practice and shake the rust off and learn how to play the game. So we're gonna see hopefully some good stuff. All right. Let's go ahead and drop that. Our first group that we're going to be covering today is Group 27. Go ahead and change the stream tile over. Alright, and we only have a couple of games here. This is like an appetizer group. Not a whole lot got uploaded because you know, in the first couple of preseason weeks, players are still having to figure out their schedules and give out some buys. So we're just going to have a couple appetizer games. Our first game of the day is going to be Brew Quad versus Eskia Prime. It's going to be a Terran versus Zerg on a Polypoid. Yeah. I'm not entirely sure what tiers these players are in, but we're gonna see what their games look like, and I suppose we're just gonna hop right into it. So our first game of the day, Brew Quad versus Eskia Prime, Terran versus Zerg on Polyploid. As I sort out, make sure, let's switch over to the game. Turn back on our CPL overlay. In the, nope, okay, hold on, things are going wrong. In the bottom right corner, Polyploid, we have Brew Quad heading up the yellow Zerg. Oh my god. Facing off against their opponent. It's been a while. Facing off their opponent in the bottom left corner of Polyploid, we have Eskia Prime. Now, watch the hallucinated Kakaroo fade away into nothingness. Alright, well, Eskia Prime is scouting in the correct direction for Polypoid Zerg Overlord Scout, but unfortunately in this game it's the wrong direction, so they will not first scout their Terran opponent, but usually that's just a minor optimization thing, doesn't play a huge part in how the game plays out unless the Terran does something cheesy. It doesn't look like either of our players are doing anything. I'm going to lower the music volume just a little bit so that it isn't quite so loud. There goes the drone scout, probably go over here and see their opponent. Low ground barracks. This can be a very safe place since you can get an early start on your sort of your wall in here. Means you don't have to be building like your supply depots down here later, since you can just throw the bunker up right above it. Eskia Prime sends out their first scouting SCV, heading north, and will not find the Zerg infestation. The drone comes up. It's going to see the barracks scouting over here, and we'll be able to run right into the main to confirm that this is Eskia's main base and not a really weird proxy. Oh, it looks like Eskia is going straight into a command center expansion here, which looks like it should probably be able to go unpunished since Brew Quad went for the hatchery first. So both players going for a bit of a macro opening here. Yep, both players decide, you know what, yes, we're just going to both get our expansions. Nothing too crazy. The drone should be able to scoot out of here relatively unscathed as the Marine comes up and tries to hunt it down. Meanwhile, Brew Quad is getting their third macro hatch up in their main as 2 extractors. Oh my god. Well, I've heard of a gas stealing Protoss, but I'm not sure if that's this is a strategy for Zerg. Cancels and then instant rebuild. Oh no. Unfortunately, the drone glitched out a little bit and they weren't able to get right back on top. But the gas for Askia is severely delayed here, so their factory will be a little late. Not that shouldn't matter too much, as it doesn't look like there's anything Brew Quad is rushing to at the moment that would really require that level of tech to fight off. The Zerglings just poking out at the main, trying to see what's going on, keeping Askia honest, keeping them in their base. As Zergling speed is on the way, no hive yet, and there is just an SCV hanging out. That's yeah. I mean, I guess if your opponent isn't making Zerglings and all the Zerglings they make were rallied across the map, that'll work. Zergling goes to kill the SCV, and it looks like this one should get picked off pretty easily. Meanwhile, back at Askia's base, they're getting into their factory now somewhere. Right there. Right up in the corner. It's being started. Brew Quad's lair is about halfway done, it looks like. Yeah, or a little over. So both players getting their tech up reasonably well. Askia's macroing getting their worker count extremely high. It's now 29 to 21. But Brew Quad has quite a lot of drones queued up, ready to catch back up economically. SCV finally goes down. I don't think it got the scout out on the lair, so Brew Quad can kind of just assume that it's on the way, and there's the lair finishes and an almost immediate spire. So, but Askia can kind of just assume that a lair is somewhere. I don't think there's any sort of even cheese that would rely on staying on hatcheries, so it's one of those things that's just really safe to assume that the Zerg has gotten at this point. And it looks like Askia is going for a big mech play. It's not standard for Terran. Usually, Terran versus Zerg is all about your bioforce, getting a bunch of Marines and getting some medics and roaming the map and trying to keep the Zerg contained. Mech has a lot of harder time doing that, but especially at the lower levels, the CPL level, mech is a lot easier to control. It can also be very punishing against players who aren't responding to it correctly. So it's still a very powerful strategy, even if it's if we were to like put on our nerd gear and go, well, actually, the optimization of this build is way off. The Zerg can, yeah, no, it's a CPL level. Going mech is completely, even at pro levels, going mech is somewhat viable if you have a plan behind it, but especially at the CPL level, it's a really good variation that you can go for. Meanwhile, Brew Quad is looking like they aren't doing anything too weird. They're just playing super standard Zerg. They're getting their little Mutaflock ready, coming out. A little bit delayed, but they went for the bigger macro play. Yeah. Let's see, that's about, it looks like 11 Mutalisks. 4, 8, 9. I thought there were 2 more being made. Okay, there's another one trickling in. You can see the Overlord in the command group is trying to go with them. But Mulus has gotten into the main, and they're going to start harassing on these SCVs, taking them out. Goliaths come up to try and fight them. But, I mean, you can see, like, at the Muta health bar how much damage they're actually doing. However, that is a lot of Goliaths. Yeah, Brewquad is committing a lot of Mutas to kill SCVs, and they had an opportunity to just run out and get out of there as soon as the Goliaths started trickling in, or maybe picking off 1 or 2 Goliaths on the way out, but unfortunately they stayed just a little too long. Most of the SCVs had transferred to the natural, and while Brewquad is now ahead in workers, they lost most of their Mutalisks, actually. They had like an entire control group, and they're down to just a couple. Scourge coming out. Those are going to be amazing for countering the science vessels as Askia gets them, but Askia is really dedicated to this this Goliath mech push, Marines and whatnot, which is a very powerful push when things aren't happening. However, Brewquad is setting up their little line of sunken colonies, which is a really good response here, because sunken colonies will deal their full 40 damage to Goliaths, and that's like 5 hits. No, that's 4 hits from a sunken colony to kill Goliath, and that is a lot more hits, a lot less hits than what a Goliath needs to kill a sunken colony. You can see how they just get shredded as they come up. There's not really a backbone to this army. Usually, when you're doing a big mech push like this, you want 1 or 2 siege tanks so that the Goliaths can camp outside of the sunken range. You set up some siege tanks, start killing the sunkens, and then the Goliaths can come in and clear things out. But as the Goliaths have moved out of the base, Brewquad has come back in with more Mutalisks, done some, it looks like some decent economic damage, but they're getting past the point of being useful. Usually when you're in, like, once you've thrown away that first huge control group of Mutalisks have died, oh no. Top right base for Brewquad, it was alive for a little bit, but not long enough. A Zergling or a drone dies as it's popping out and phases out of existence because the Starcraft engine doesn't know how to handle that. And the Mules are going to come up and try to fight the Goliaths. Unfortunately, while the Goliath versus Mutalisk matchup is extremely weird, you need to probably at least be on parity with Mutalisks, and it's still the same calculus that goes into Muta versus Marine is kind of still similar with Muta versus Goliath, where you you can't engage the army immediately head on unless you have overwhelming numbers, like 1-to-1. Otherwise, you really just need to play the harassment game and try to pick them off on the outskirts of where their main army is. Mutas look like they're coming in again for more harassment. Skia Prime hasn't really set up a lot of turrets to defend from the Mutalisks, so again, a lot of the Goliaths are out on the army, but it's one of those situations where, oh man, a huge macro cycle just pops out to kill them. It's one of those situations where having the bad army reinforcement and micro kind of helps out, because yeah, a lot of these Goliaths aren't with the main army here, but you know, sometimes, okay, I forgot to rally them out. Well, now they're in the main and can defend against the Mutalisks. Sometimes things work out like that. 2 evolution chambers are up, and Hydralisk upgrades are also coming, so it looks like Brewquad is going to be going into a crazy Zerg style, although Queen's Nest is up, so we will be seeing Hive Tech here soon. With double Evo chamber, I mean, he might just be going Defiler Hydralisk. He's really dedicated to the Mutalisk play right now. So, you know, on 2 bases, Zerg can't really afford a lot of tech. Yeah, Brewquad has delayed getting that 3rd for a very long time, and you can really see that's crippled. I mean, you can look at their gas count. They're struggling to be able to afford even just reinforcing their Mutalisk flock, while Askia Prime is just happy sitting on 2 Terran bases. Double expansion out of Brewquad to try and quickly catch up, but this will get caught by Askia. Yeah, losing that top right base really hurt, because Zerg really needs to get onto those 3rd and 4th gases to really be functional in the mid to late game. Siege tanks are starting to trickle out here for Askia, as is the starport, so we will be seeing science vessels soon. But man, that is a lot of Goliaths. Yeah, you only need 1 or 2 siege tanks, because again, their main purpose is going to be sieging the sunken, so that your mech army can push in and start shooting things. Goliaths pretty much will be able to kill everything else. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, the high rails are starting to come out, and double upgrades are coming. We have upgrade missile tech and evolve carapace, which now that I'm reading these, now that I'm reading the what the actual names are, I'm very confused as why you upgrade missile attacks, but you evolve more carapace. Hello. Let's see. Flyer carapace on the way as well, but when the Terran is going to start adding Valkyries to their army mix, and that's pretty much going to invalidate all of the Mutalisks. 1 or 2 Valkyries will completely clean up all of these, and Brewquad has a move out here on the Hydralisks. Unfortunately, they do not do so well against Goliaths, and this is looking like a pretty unstoppable mech force here. This is going to be a really dangerous push. If Brewquad is going to be able to defend it, they have a shot. Their third base is starting to get up, and they'll be able to get that third gas up and running, and they'll be able to start affording things like Defiler tech. Unfortunately, I think they would need to defend it and also clear a huge chunk of this army, or else Askia Prime will just be able to continually reinforce it. Yeah, the siege tanks are starting to really lay into the sunken colonies, as Askia can just slowly push forward. Second one goes down, they're not being replaced, and it's be really hard to replace them. And as the last sunken colony falls, the Goliaths will just sort of be able to move in. Between the Hydralisks and the Mutalisks, they might be able to push the Terran back, but Askia is in a very dominating position right now. See the SCVs, they're just being sent out to look around, make sure Brewquad doesn't have any additional bases. It'll probably be able to find the third, and then at that point, Askia can just kind of send a small detachment of tanks or Goliaths up there to finish it off. In come the Valkyries, luring Hydralisks into tank range, and yep, and then the Mutalisks are going to come. It's going to be a lot of damage. Actually. When you have that many Mutalisks, they are actually pretty resilient. Fight a lot. However, they're taking a really bad angle here, where they're just shooting at some siege tanks, and this entire cluster of Goliaths behind it can shoot them out. Again, Mutalisks, you don't want to be engaging into direct combat with your opponents, because they're very tanky when they aren't doing that. Otherwise, they will kind of melt very quickly. And that's going to be our first game of the day. Let's go back to our little splash screen here. Our next game is going to be Brewquad versus Light Swarm. Which is going to be a Zerg versus Zerg. So, you know, one of the best matchups in the game, I'd say, from a spectator's point of view. I've heard that many pro players and people who just play the game in general really hate this matchup, which it can be a fair assessment. Someone in chat like that. Personally, I think it's one of the most fun ones to watch, just because it's a lot of action. It's a very pure form of the game, where it's just like you're making Zerglings, you're making Mutalisks, and sometimes when that doesn't happen, we get really weird games. But let's get into it. In the top right of Polypoid, we have our returning player from Game 1, Brewquad, playing as the light mustardy yellow Zerg. And in the bottom right, we have Light Swarm, heading up the dark blue Zerg brood. Now, both players sending the overlords in the correct direction. Top right goes to the left, bottom right goes up, since those are they get to the expansion of your opponent as soon as they get up there. So Light Swarm is going to be able to find Brewquad first, since if Brewquad, when Brewquad goes to make their expansion hatchery, it'll be right here, so it's just a little bit shorter of a distance. And Brewquad is going to have to... We'll know that Light Swarm is down here based on the first Overlord, unless it hides. But they won't know what Light Swarm is doing until this Overlord runs down here and finds them. See both players. It's actually the second Overlord comes out. It looks like both players are doing pretty much the same build. As the second Overlord comes out, they both send them in the opposite direction of the first. And I lied; they are not doing the same build. Brewquad is going for a 12 pool wall. Light Swarm is going for a pretty quicker hatchery. Doesn't quite look like a 12 hatch. Something a bit different. And then as soon as the money is up there, Light Swarm will get their own spawning pool. Now, I'm always... I feel like I've been told how these two builds work against each other several times. And if I'm remembering correctly, pool first versus hatchery first favors the hatchery first player, because by the time the spawning pool and the Zerglings finish for the spawning pool first player and the Zerglings run across the map, the hatchery first player will already have their spawning pool up, their hatchery up, and they will have like 6 Zerglings about to finish. Brewquad gets their second hatchery in their main, which is a safer play. Oh, and they're going just one base into lair first, so they're going into a one base spire play. Okay, and yep, they're playing extremely defensive. They're setting up their Zergling concave on the ramp so that Light Swarm can't bust them. Light Swarm, on the meanwhile, is not getting... oh no, they're getting a third hatchery in their main, so they're going to be far ahead economically. They're getting a creep colony at their natural, just in case Brewquad tries to run out. However, Light Swarm will also be able to get an evolution chamber and spore colonies to defend against quicker mutalisks. Let's see. Yeah, both players are just trying to defend their bases right now. You can see the Zerglings are sort of trying to create a line here that'll make it really hard to just run up and engage. Yep, Sunken Colony finishes, so Light Swarm is extremely safe. However, they're behind tech-wise. No gas here at all for Light Swarm, so we probably are going to have to see an evolution chamber made with creep colonies thrown down. Otherwise, the first couple of mutalisks that come out of Brewquad will just be able to run across the map, start killing drones, and win the game that way. Yep, there's the evolution chamber. Yeah, and Light Swarm is also getting a bunch of drones, so that's one of the telltale signs. So this way they'll be able to throw down like 4 or 5 spore colonies and still be ahead economically. So as long as they can survive the initial Hydra wave that's going to come out of here, you can see Brewquad has amassed about 500 gas, so he will be able to just get 5 mutas almost instantly. Yeah, if Brewquad had foregone wing speed, they would have had the resources for getting 6 Mutalisks somewhat instantly, but they didn't, so somewhat instantly. Timing is slightly off here, but did I see a Hydra Den? Oh, it's gonna be one of those games. All right. Well, we're going to see if Light Swarm can survive the initial Mutalisk attack. Because if they're able to, I mean, they're getting their spore colonies set up in their mains. However, Brewquad does also have a lot of Zerglings behind this. So the Mutas might be able to just fly in, try to get some harassment done, but then the Ling Flood also is looking extremely deadly. After all, Light Swarm has devoted a lot of resources to defending against the Mutalisk attack, that they might not have enough resources to defend against the Zergling attack. Hydralisk upgrades are coming. But, yeah, there it is. The Zergling count is insane. This is only like one control group of Zerglings, followed by probably, it looks like, almost another entirely full control group of Zerglings. And we have 11 Zerglings in a sunken colony to defend against them. Yeah, the Mutalisks can also kind of just post up right here to try to snipe incoming reinforcements. They just kind of dive in, take a lot of damage, and start working on clearing the enemy Zerglings. Like you can trade the Mutalisks for killing Zerglings and the sunken colony, since if you win either the ground war or the air war, you win the game. The sunken colony does fall, Hydralisks start coming out, but all these... Okay, no. It looks like the attack from Brewquad is going to get cleaned up here. As the remaining Hydralisks and Spore colonies might be able to help. However, Zerglings will tear through the Hydralisks as easy as they tear through anything else, and the Hydralisks that are on their way are not going to be able to do much to help that. A bunch of Zerglings reinforcements come out, but the Mutalisks, like I said, they posted up in there and they started hitting them. The numbers just aren't going to be playing in Light Swarm's favor, and Light Swarm GG's, and Brewquad takes the game. Demand the bottom overlay. Can't see Muta count. There's 4 Mutas. 5. My bad. Alright. That is our second game. Okay, hold on. I need to switch back to our overlay here. Almost done with Group 7. Light Swarm was in a pretty good position, it felt like. However, unfortunately, Hydralisks are one of those things where if you get caught right as the Hydralisks are finishing and before you have that critical mass, they can just get completely run over by Zerglings. Because they do less damage to Zerglings, and they don't, and Zerglings, like, they don't really have the movement to run away or take good engagements. So Light Swarm, Brewquad lost to Askia Prime, beat Light Swarm, and now we're going to see if Askia Prime is going to be able to defeat Light Swarm as well, or if Light Swarm is going to take one back for the Zerg team. It's going to be another Terran versus Zerg, once again on Polypoid. Alright. What am I looking at? Oh yeah, stream change. Alright. In the bottom right corner, wow, so in the bottom right corner we have Light Swarm playing as the yellow Zerg brood. And across from them, in the bottom left corner once again, we have Askia Prime. It's the white Terran, who's already played from these exact positions in this exact matchup. So they've been warmed up, and they're going to go for the 2P to try and take out Light Swarm. We're going to see if they're going to manage to do it, or if Light Swarm is going to be able to take what they've learned as a Zerg player in ZVZ and adapted to kill the Terran. However, there isn't there is not much you can take from ZVZ and bring it to the other matchups. Because it's so just it's just such a straightforward matchup where it's like you make Mutalisks, you make Zerglings, and you have to really get yourself into a weird position to go into other techs. Hydralisks you see a lot of sometime, not a lot of, but relative to other units you can see Hydralisks sometimes, but you really have to get into an economically advantageous position. If you aren't, then basically what happened last game happens, where you don't quite have enough defenses. Like, you have spore colonies and they're doing good, you have a couple sunken colonies and they're doing good, but then your opponent just goes, okay, is your spore sunken imbalance too high? Because if you have too many spores, I'll just make a bunch of Zerglings and go kill you. If you have too many sunkens, I'll just make a bunch of Mutalisks and go kill you. So it's a very delicate balance if you're trying to go for an alternate strategy, which is why a lot of players don't do it. But that's why it's all the more impressive when it happens, because it's very funny when you get into those really weird ZVZs. Lightswarm has now fully scouted their opponent. Skia Prime is headed straight to the bottom right now that they've seen the Overlord. They kind of pretty much know where their opponent is, since you never send Overlords diagonal. Yeah. So it was a pool first. No, it was a hatch first here from Lightswarm, since the hatchery's so close to finishing. And the same build out of Skia Prime as we saw in their first game against Brewquad. They went Barracks, Command Center, and we'll probably see a very similar setup there with the bunker. And I would assume mech as well this game. The layers going up on the bottom ramp, as the first few Zerglings out of Lightswarm chase the SCV around right behind our CPL overlay and kill it where no one can see them. These Zerglings are going to get off scot-free in worker court. First bunker coming up, or not first bunker, the bunker's coming up, and it looks like it'll have plenty of time to finish and load up Marines as the Zerglings try to get over there. So Zerglings will probably just post up outside and keep the Terran honest, keep them in their base, as Zerglings do. Yep, factory coming up and no additional barracks, so it looks like we are going to be looking at pretty much the same type of mech play as we saw in game 1 with the Skia. And for the Zerg, we see the basically standard ZVT stuff where you get your lair up and then immediately start getting your spire. Zergling speed looked like it just finished, so Lightswarm is going to be able to have pretty much complete map control, especially when the Terran goes mech. The Zerg can just kind of be like, hey, I'm going to get Zerglings and Mutalisks, and I'm just going to be way faster than you, and if you ever move out on the map, I'll try and shave off as many units as possible. Terran won't really have the mobility to take an early risk and move out to try and get a positional advantage. Yeah. Oh, and Lightswarm is moving out to take their third. Looks like they're going to be taking a close third to Skia, which can be very risky. When Terran is going mech, you generally want to be as far away from them as possible because you're forcing them to move out, and mech has to move out slowly. So taking the close position on that is a bit difficult. However, of course, Lightswarm has not scouted, does not know that Skia is going for mech. Oh, and 2 vultures come out as well as vulture speed, so a slight difference than what we saw in the first game. Since these vultures will actually provide a Scio with a lot of map control. Once speed gets researched, they'll be able to outrun the Zerglings. First sets of Mutalisks come in. There's our first 6. And they're going to be able to start getting some extremely good harassment done. Engineering Bay hasn't finished, and he went Vultures instead of Goliaths early on, so the Mutalisks are going to be able to actually run pretty much unopposed. This actually might just be a game-ending play. The Goliaths are going to trickle out, but if Lightsworn just keeps reinforcing with Mutalisks, Vultures try to get a run by. One does succeed, but gets taken out by the Sunken Colony. Mutalisks continue to tear through the SCVs. Marines come back to try and save as many of their SCVs as possible, but they pull away from the Muta there, and all the Marines are going to die. Goliaths are going to start trickling out, but it's in really low numbers. Mutalisks will murder Goliaths, especially when they don't have any missile turret cover. So yeah, Mutalisks just fly right into the natural, do a little dance over the Goliaths' soon-to-be dead bodies, and just starts picking them off. Okay, a bit of a weird mismicro there. And yeah, Mutalisks position right above the factories to start sniping Goliaths as they move out of the base. Again, we're getting into a position where if Lightsworn just keeps massing Mutas and they could just aim move them over here, they will be able to win. SCVs are trying to transfer back, but they're just going to get caught and killed. GG is called, and Lightsworn takes the game. Yeah, those early first 6 Mutalisks are some of the deadliest in the game, especially when your opponent hasn't set up the right defenses for them. You need like 15 missile turrets. So yeah, very well played there from Lightsworn. Really just flew over, was like, oh wait, you don't have turrets, and killed them. Very, very Zerg playstyle. Alright, so that's going to finish out Group 27 for us.